if we had thought and passed laws to protect this sector in 1998, instead of opening it up completely without a long-term vision of where the world is going. I want us not to reinvent the wheel. There are lessons we can learn. India should provide us with an example of how to get this right early, or the failure of getting it right early. We should study and take lessons from those who have gone ahead of us. In India, for example, by 1989, the English-speaking tech graduates in their universities and colleges were twice the number that USA was producing at the same time. But without significant thinking by the state of India on how to absorb these graduates, by making laws that protect, that nurture, and grow the IT firms, many of those graduates migrated to the USA. Now, so the social costs of training these IT graduates went to India, while the benefits instead went to the USA citizens. Now, this is partly, for you who follow current events, this is partly the reason why there are so many CEOs, over 12 of them, of Indian origin, that run some of the tech companies and fast-moving consumer goods in the USA, from Google's Alphabet to Microsoft to Twitter to Adobe to IBM to MasterCard to Pepsi. All these are people who left because they were trained in India as young people, but the market could not absorb them. The question we need to ask ourselves as we learn all these things today in 2022 is, what results do we want from our education? How do we pay the social costs of this education that is almost more than 3% of our GDP expenditure annually? What preparations are we doing as a country to make available policies and laws that grow and protect the very businesses that we want these graduates to be absorbed in? Do we want to keep training doctors, engineers, and they leave us? If the government pay remains low, as it might for some foreseeable future, we should attract these trained people into private companies that we support, so that we can retain this talent and grow the economy. Okay, at some stage, we created the Uganda Communications Commission as a regulator. Remember, in my last segment, I said in the earlier podcast that I prefer promotion rather than regulation as a way to grow the critical sectors that drives tomorrow's economy. But we created UCC, and UCC created the Rural Development Fund. It's called RDF. By 2019, that fund was projected to be $30 million. This fund is from the subventions and fees that the 5 telecom companies and radios and others pay to UCC. So it's not too late. Suppose we use the local content law, which designates 30 to 40% of local services in our laws to be executed by local contractors. And by the way, I'm putting a note here. This law on local content is simply a proclamation on statute books, good as it is. This is because the real practice is that in such simple things as production and delivery of sand, delivery of stones, and later on making tarmac in the road sector, or even provision of food to large contractors in the oil and gas sector, the contracts and serious business is still all picked by foreign companies using local agents, not producers. Why? Even with the law, this is because largely the very youth companies this law seeks to empower, they still very much require startup capital. They require training. They require a learning curve, R&D, audited accounts, management capabilities, a particular standard and scale in order for them to make use of this law. So it's still on our statute books, but we could start to make some moves on utilizing it. So suppose we used this fund differently and we focused it in this sector in a different way. Would we not de-risk both technology and commercial entry by small firms? Would we not build indigenous technology tied to our needs in the telecom and IT sector? Would we not guarantee innovation? I raise these questions with you because I think this is doable. This is because we know if you use procurement laws, as other countries have done for their economies, you use procurement laws to strengthen the domestic market, you automatically lessen the death curve of local farms, because local farms don't last more than 5 years. So you shorten that curve of death. The triangle of death for those local companies is lessened. Now, what more? You also shorten their years of struggle. And what more? You force the multinational companies handling these large contracts to speak to these youth companies with respect and with ease. You grow the sector from simple apps, which young people are doing today, internet cafes, district portals. These are small things that this fund is doing, public pay phones. The RDF fund is invested with limited returns, but if you strengthened it and refocused it, you would get into more structured production of technology that the country and the region will need tomorrow. We therefore need to pass laws, policies, regulations, and also enforce them. Laws that promote what I have described above. Because even if a company or a farm is technically successful with its innovation, commercial success is different. Commercial success is a different story. You can have good technology, but to scale it is another story. Unless there are deep incentives, such as very low interest loans to these emerging sectors, R&D expenditure that is deductible from taxable income for those companies. This is the IT sector I just mentioned, right? But just think about incentivizing dairy companies, for example, by insisting on supplies of milk to 1 million children in schools daily. Just that. This would quickly push our country's milk production by an extra 300 million liters of processed products. It would also build a culture of drinking milk as children grow up in the country knowing the taste and preferences of their country's milk. And you don't need laws even for this. This isn't even a need for a law. It is simply administrative guidance procedures by government that would push extra consumption and production in this sector. That's just dairy. How about supporting IT firms in the repair, servicing, maintenance, and eventual production of spare parts and patents for our fighting technology in the army, on land, on our lakes, and in the air? If you freed and gave incentives to these young people's farms, how much would this save in external defense expenditure? And how much space this would create really in the Uganda Military Business Industrial Complex, giving the National Enterprise Corporation, our NEC, a huge strategic advantage and better budgets they have than today. This is one example in the ICT sector I wanted to share with you. Have a good weekend and see you here next week.
Would like to hear from you. Please email us at info@tapmedia.com and visit our website at www.tapmedia.com. You can also visit our offices located at Tomosi Business Park, Luzira, Port Bell Road, or call 0414 220 702. Thank you.